Derek Underwood is an Assistant Commissioner of Agriculture for Consumer Protection.
Yes, ma'am.
And boy, that is a big topic. And if you really want to know about it, you can see the interview that we did of Eric from Making It Grow. But today, we are at the South Carolina Agribiz and Farm Expo 2017, and there's been a lot of talk about a new Food Safety Modernization Act that has people like, oh.
Oh, that's right. It's the first big legislation that's taken place in 70 years. And it's pretty much taking the idea of being reactionary when a food safety concern comes up to being preventative. So one of the big elements behind the Food Safety Modernization Act is produce safety. Okay. And a new produce safety rule is going to impact some farmers in our state. And state agriculture, we're at the forefront as always when it comes to food protection. So we're actually developing a brand new creating a brand new department under my Consumer Protection Division.
My goodness.
Correct. I think we spoke last, we had 4 departments. This is going to be the 5th one.
Wow.
So we're going to have 8 new employees, and I just hired a produce safety manager, and we're now actively interviewing for an outreach coordinator, and we'll be having 6 more positions opening in the next 6 to 18 months.
I guess the first thing you've got to do, though, is educate people. Is
We do.
Is that your primary
It
beginning
is.
point?
The money we received $3.5 million from the Food and Drug for a 5-year grant, and 70% of that funding is for outreach and education. So that's kind of unheard of when you come from a regulatory mind, because
usually you're writing a ticket and saying, I'm going to give you a fine.
Usually 100% is regulatory, but we're in cooperation with Clemson. We're actually allowed them to be a sub-award recipient, so they're getting funding from us too to help with the education part of it. But we're hiring an outreach specialist or an outreach coordinator and 2 outreach specialists, one of whom will be bilingual. So we'll be on the farms, we'll be at the locations to help educate the farmers and the farm workers.
The person who's actually getting the product out of the field
and putting it in all the way back to the harvesters, the packing houses, the storage facilities, going out and engaging with them and let them know what it requires to be compliant, and then our regulatory folks will come out to verify all that.
Do you think that this is going to add huge levels of time and money between the growing and the time it gets to the consumer, or is it just being more careful of things that are already in place?
Initially, it's going to be a monetary impact, like any type of new regulatory thing that's going to take place. But I think the fact that we're educating these farmers, and they're mostly, they don't want to get anybody sick.
No.
They're doing everything the best of their ability to make sure they have a safe product.
We have a safe food chain already.
The safest in the world. So what this is going to do is provide the education for the farmers how to keep records of what they do. So, they're checking the cleanliness of their water. They know how to turn their soil amendments before they put it on the produce so they don't have any contamination. These rules will actually help ensure that they're doing it according to a standard that's been proven scientifically, and also to allow them to pretty much make the product and grow the product and harvest the product that will be safe and allows them to keep the record. So when we come in, we can verify what they're doing, and it'll give them more of a sense of accomplishment, more of a sense of pride, because they're doing things according to the feds and the state to make sure that their practices and their handling procedures and all the things they do to harvest that fruit and vegetables that we end up having on our table are as safe as they can possibly be.
So you will actually go to the farms and you will be examining some of the records. Will you actually be taking samples of produce still to check for certain
samples
things as well?
Of produce, samples of water. We'll actually check their records to see whether or not they've checked, they've tested their water to create a baseline, and then they've had the annual testing to make sure that the water that they're using to irrigate their farm is not the same water that their cows are bathing in, or not the same ones where the where some waste might be done, or a dead animal could happen. Everything goes on at a farm.
Sure.
And we just want to make sure
it's nature.
It's nature. That's right. It's nature. But we want to make sure that all the elements that go into produce, whether or not it be the water, the manure, or the soil amendments they put into it, to the health of the employees. A lot of the cultural issues with our migrant workers or whatnot is they don't have the same culture that we have.
Yes.
So one thing we run into is a lot of times, for instance, this doesn't sound pleasant, but when you go to the restroom, we dispose of our
And in
towels.
in some of their countries, that's not the standard procedure.
Right, they put it in a trash can
Yeah,
instead of putting it down the toilet. So
Yeah.
a lot of times that can get tracked out, that can get on your feet, or walking through a manure field before you
Yes.
go start picking the produce. There's all these different things that can be done to help minimize food safety risks that we have on our farms, and we're just trying to educate the farmers and educate the workers to make sure that they're going to be in compliance with the new law.
Julie Northcutt was with us, and she said that they're hiring a bilingual person to help them with education, because we do have a lot of people who come from other countries or who are brought up speaking more easily understand a different
Right.
language than English is their first language.
Right.
And so y'all are really making a strong effort to reach the people where they need to be reached, instead of saying, well, it's your responsibility to reach us, we're going to reach you instead.
Exactly, because we can have something translated in writing, but unless you have that emotional connection, or you can speak to somebody in that language and understand the ambiance, I guess, behind your
Yes.
voice, it's very difficult to communicate to some folks.
Well, and also I think the more comfortable someone is, the more likely they are to ask a question.
Exactly.
And the whole thing is you want people to thoroughly understand what you're saying and not just have a vague understanding of it. We want absolute compliance with
Right,
this.
and we've asked during our educational session today, we've asked folks to engage with us early and often, because this is brand new for us too. This isn't something we've prepared to do. This fell in our lap. We've had some training, we've had some things, but developing policy, developing mechanisms for us to go out and collect information. The farmer has the ability now to help us develop the policies that they're going to have to adhere to. So we're really reaching out to these groups through advocacy groups, through the South Carolina Farm Bureau, and through Clemson, to allow our farmers and those affected by this to come along for the journey, so to speak. So they'll have input, because we might miss something that they see. So it's always good to work together collaboratively, so the end result, everybody can take pride in it.
Well, and that is the atmosphere that Hugh Weathers has established at our State Department
That's
of
right.
Agriculture, because even though you're regulatory, people come to you ahead of time to get you to give them advice on how to be compliant,
Right.
rather than being afraid to reach out to you because you might come back at them in some way that's unpleasant. So I think that is, to me, the most important thing that's happened, is when you've got an agency that's in charge and yet people see them as there to help them
Right.
be successful. That's how we want our government regulatory
Commissioner Weathers always
agencies to work.
says common sense regulations.
Yes.
And the thing we're trying to get across to our farmers and folks is that this is already here, this law's here. We're introducing enabling legislation to the General Assembly this session, probably
It's
next
here.
week.
Yeah, it's
And
happening.
so we need those to reach out to their legislators and realize that this is coming. Do you want South Carolina agriculture to be the face of this new law, or do you want Washington? So we believe that we have an interest in South Carolina farms and business. And during my session, I asked them, did they know two people's names? They were both head people in the FDA, and
Oh.
nobody raised their hands. But then
That's
when
good.
I asked them how many people here know Commissioner Hugh Weathers
Yes.
and know me, everybody
Yeah,
raised
yeah,
their hands.
yeah,
So I said,
yeah.
when something happens, you can pick up the phone, you can call us, you can come meet with us. It's very important that South Carolina agriculture is the lead and gets that enabling legislation passed.
We spoke with Aaron Wood during this program, and he said that they're hoping for some announcements next year that mean there'll be some manufacturing that's coming in that might be involved with processing. And
Right.
so this is so critical that y'all are already way ahead of the curve on this, because that means when those people come, they can come to South Carolina and make that incredible financial investment possibly. That means that we'll start up a facility that's going to have a lot of jobs, because they know that the product they'll receive from our farmers is going to meet the measurements in every way.
That's exactly right. So when you look at us, we're a well-oiled machine. Agriculture has the marketing element. We also have the regulatory element. And too many times those two elements would pit against each other. But in our department, under Commissioner Weathers, we work in unison, and we really do things to both advocate our produce and our marketing and our food stuff, but also to let people know that the regulatory arm is just as important, and you have to comply with both in order to be successful.
Thank you for what you've done, and thank you for the attitude that you take to the citizens of South Carolina.
Well, thank
It
you,
makes it
Amanda.
easier for them to be compliant.
All right, well, it's glad to be here.